Welcome to Friendly Argument with J. Andrew Bernard and Jeremy Jones.
Let's do this.
New stuff,
All the tangents.
some politics, booze,
Some more politics.
stuff about Kansas, and lots of cheers aids.
Friendly Argument is a podcast showcasing conversations that seek common ground across the aisle of American politics, as well as a few laughs. We hope you guys enjoy, and thanks for watching. And thank you for joining me for my favorite part of the day, which is coffee. So, cheers to you.
Hey, well, I just finished my tea. Cheers to that.
Nice. So, yeah, I guess I'll do the formal introduction. This is Friendly Argument. I'm Jeremy Jones, and
Wait. Sorry. We're going to have to cut there. You can't just say I'm going to do it and start talking. You got to do the, like, what's up, guys, you know?
hello is what I'm apparently supposed to say, according to Andrew.
Oh, that's right. That's your catchphrase. That's your catchphrase.
I thought about where that might come from, and I the only thing I could think of is Jack Donaghy on 30 Rock.
Uh-huh.
Liz's boss, because he answers.
Does he say it like that?
He says hello whenever he answers the phone, and so I'm like, I think he's rad, but it was subconscious. I wasn't thinking about doing it, but yeah, we'll cut and get back into. Hello. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Friendly Argument. This is Jeremy Jones, and we are very happy to have our first ever interview on the show. Our close buddy, Yali, and how do you pronounce your last name, just so I don't butcher it?
Yali Bitan. Howdy.
Thank you so much, man. Yali's a pal we've known through D&D, and so and through friends of friends, and he's become a close friend over time. He contacted us regarding masculinity, and I will, and a couple other topics of possible conversation, but the one that we sort of landed on for today anyway was masculinity. And Yali, thanks for being here. Is there anything you wanted to say to start off?
Yeah, we're here to talk about masculinity. This conversation is probably going to go in a lot of different directions. I talked to Andrew last night, and you know, we had our core topic we wanted to talk about, and we went in all kinds of different directions. So I'm going to try to rein it in a little bit today, but I know that Sven's going to have our tangent counter going, so no problems.
We keep him busy with that. We really do. This is going to be probably more like we talked about previously, just kind of like a 101 for me. This masculinity is really not something I had thought about previously. Certainly not how it's not part of my political value system, that sort of list of priorities. What is how do you define masculinity?
Yeah, so we even got with Andrew last night, even just defining masculinity was pretty difficult, because to me, so for some background, I'm currently a feminist studies major at University of Santa Cruz. I got my AA in gender studies. So this is kind of really like my field. Like I think about it, probably a lot more than most people do. So yeah, to me, like what is masculinity? Like before that, we ask like, what is gender? So I think of gender as being this sort of thing that's socially constructed. It's kind of these roles and expectations that we put on people to behave a certain way. We call it, you know, feminine and masculine. And we imagine that there are just these two kind of presentations that you can act like. What the sort of like gender theory and queer theory kind of uncover is that this is not necessarily the case. There's a whole spectrum of gender, but in America and in most of the world right now, we do think of gender as being on this binary. With masculine, we associate this with biological males. We associate it with a lot of different things that, you know, Andrew and I got into some of the ways in which, you know, there's the masculinity, there's like what it really is, and then like kind of what society kind of puts it as. And personally, I don't really see that much of a distinction there. You know, if society says this is what a man is, this kind of is what a man is in our current reality. So in our current reality,
more than the individual would define it, is what you're saying. This is how society defines it would be more.
Yeah, kind of. And I mean, society is made up of individuals, right? So we as a society, like the gender kind of gets passed down. I used this analogy yesterday, or yeah, this analogy or metaphor is passed down kind of like a script from generation to generation. And, each new person kind of maybe makes their own adjustments to it, plays it out their own way, but they still generally stick to the script.
Got it. And so I guess I should have been clearer. Thank you for allowing me to clarify. Like when I said individual, how the masculinity is more how society defines it than how the individual defines it. Maybe I should have said self in place of individual, like how I would define my gender, my masculinity would sort of be trumped, to use a 2020 word, of over society would trump sort of the self in that. That
Sort of, yeah, yeah. That's a good way of thinking of it. Is yeah, if you were born without any people around you to kind of give you the example, like this is like how a man is supposed to act, you probably would act pretty different, right? But yeah, since we live in a society, we get all that messaging from our fathers, our coaches, our teachers, our movies, all that kind of stuff, and that kind of gives us this idea of what it means to be a man. But my kind of contention with that is, like I was saying, like it it's been different like all across like time and history and different parts of the world, and it's even changed in America, like in my lifetime, what it means to be a man. And yeah, in the last like century or so, it's changed quite a bit.
So those changes, what should we, in your view, would you say we should be taking away from that? Like how should we be thinking about it as individuals, as a society, as Americans, and as an electorate, politically?
Mhm. They're good questions. Yeah. So I'll address it like part by part.
Yeah.
So on the individual level, for me, like speaking from personal experience, kind of unpacking this idea of gender and like what it means throughout time and space, kind of allowed me to like realize like, oh, like I don't have to act this specific way to get taken seriously in the world. I don't have to act like as like this stereotypical man to get kind of like respect and to get validity. Like I could basically act however it is that was right to me. And so like I don't know if I've told you this, but I identify as non-binary. This makes a lot more sense to me. um, in some of my gender classes at community college, the professors would be explaining the gender binary, and they put up like masculine and feminine on the whiteboard, and they'd ask the class to holler out like the different traits that we associate with these two genders. And as we're going through, the men get all this stuff. It's like, oh, logical, aggressive, like assertive, and women get all this stuff. It's like social, caring, like this kind of stuff. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, wait, this is really weird that we create this dichotomy saying like, oh, women only act this way, men only act this way. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking almost nobody that I know falls neatly into one of these two categories based on all these assumptions, right? And the idea that men can't be caring and women can't be logical is like very, very silly to me.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, and so I see like these binary genders, men and women, as kind of confining in a way where, we talked about this with Andrew yesterday, talking about some of the good parts of it. It does kind of give a framework of like what you can live up to and like what your responsibilities ought to be. But I kind of tend away from the ought to be kind of thinking. Like I just say like this just is, right? It's like descriptive versus prescriptive. So I just look back at my life and I look when I'm younger. I wasn't much of an athlete. I always liked having long hair. I did a lot of things that we would call stereotypically masculine, but I also did things that would be stereotypically feminine. And just in understanding this and me being like, why were these certain behaviors called feminine or masculine? These just are expressions of myself. So that's on the self level, is I think this idea of manliness, womanliness, whatever, doesn't really help that much. Maybe it does in some circumstances, but I think for a lot of people, and we can even get into like, typical men, we can get into that a little bit later. But like there are a lot of ways in which these rigid gender stereotypes really hurt people and keep them confined and have all these expectations on people, at least like men's mental health and stuff, where they feel like, oh, they have to be like the breadwinner, the provider, the rock. They can't show emotions because then they're not stable. All of these really weird ideas that we've put on men that make it harder for them, I think, to be good men.
Oh, so many rich veins of conversation to be had. This is awesome. The first question I had was when they had that two sides of the two lists, sort of, this is the man side, this is the girl side. You're a man, you do these things. You're a girl, you do those things. It seems to me, and I would like to hear your thoughts on this. It seems to me that these lists might have been. I kind of believe that everybody intends. They intend to do good, and they think they're doing good, and ISIS probably believes that they're doing something good. So my first impulse is like, why? Why would they make those two lists? Well, they're probably trying to be helpful. They're trying to clarify things for people when things aren't terribly clear. The rub is life isn't clear. So you can over confine and you can over define possibly. And what I think happens, and again, I'm interested in your thought on this, those lists were probably like men tend to.
Well, yeah, so it was.
And then it gets into like only, you know what I mean? And so I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So these lists, it wasn't saying, the professor wasn't asking like, how are men and how are women? They were kind of asking like, what are the traits that we associate with men and women?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of just to illustrate like just sort of the absurdity of it. We associate all of these things with women, all these things with men. But if you really think about it for more than, just a second, you see that things are not so clear cut.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was my first thing. And then you used a term, or two terms, descriptive versus prescriptive.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could give me a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. I could talk about this. I'll use a non-gender example.
Yep.
I learned about these terms through language. Linguists, a good linguist is descriptive. They don't say like, oh, this person is like talking wrong, that would be prescriptive. You say language is this thing, you should speak this way. If you're not speaking this way, you're speaking wrong.
Interesting.
Right? And descriptive would be, oh, these people are talking this way. Let's like analyze the ways in which they're talking and see how it is language. What is the communicative abilities of it?
Check.
So in the gender one, it's like descriptive would be like, this is how men are acting. This is how women are acting. Prescriptive would be, this is how men should act. This is how women should act.
Check. No, that's a very illustrative example. Thank you. That helps me understand. I guess my question would be, and I think I find myself in political conversations with others, sort of like, what would the Andrew response be here? Just because we do, we talk so frequently about it. There's a lot of ways that I feel and things that I do that are not beneficial. Couple specific examples. I have a temper. I've always had a temper. Some people find that hard to believe, but particularly like road rage. I am real struggle in the car. And as silly as that may sound, these are situations where I'm like, I really have to not share my emotions. My emotions are not my friends in these situations. And for me, hearing like, control your emotions, don't show emotions, that really means a whole, like, that sounds really good to me. That sounds really smart to me. to do just because I know myself as the individual, not as, all of masculinity or maleness. That's really good for me to really not uh, show, and certainly not share my emotions. I honestly, I even try to not think in those moments. I just really try to reset the whole system, almost like a meditative kind of thing. So when you say how we should act, I do think there are some situations where I should act as that male list kind of prescribes, and not put on me by anybody, not put on me by society. I don't like myself when I let those emotions out sometimes. So how would that fit into the masculine or the feminist studies thinking?
Yeah, so like when you said that, what came to my mind is, yeah, like men are kind of generally given the lesson that expressing emotions is bad. So, or expressing specific kinds of emotions is generally like men are not taught to. It's like you can't really be like anything that makes you vulnerable. So men are not taught to be like sad and empathetic, really, because that puts them in a place where it's like they could get hurt, I guess, is like the logic. And so then it seems like this is one of the things we talked about in the classes, and this is something that I've really found in my own experience, existing and being around other men. It seems that men have a very small range of emotions that they're sort of allowed, to express. One of them being anger.
Yeah.
It's like anger and pride are kind of like the two like biggest ones that I see in my life. And so, yeah, like, so when you describe that, like you get road rage, I ask myself, like, where does that come from? Why is it that when something happens on the road, you respond with anger? Okay. And like, this is a big question. This is very individualized.
Yeah.
That this probably comes from like your childhood or like when you just started driving or something. I remember in one of my psychology classes back in high school, we got taught, I wish I could remember the name of like the specific concept, but the example we were given is like, it was like a road rage kind of example where you're driving and someone cuts you off. Your immediate reaction would be to be like, hey, like screw this guy, right? Or like honk or whatever. And then what we were taught is kind of to like take a step back and just think like, okay, like I don't know what's going on in that person's day. This is what I always imagine, because like I'm, relatively a new driver. I've been driving for a while now, but I remember when I first started driving, especially around LA's freeways, like there would often be times where I almost miss an exit and I have to be like, oh, please let me in. And so now when I see stuff like that, I just tell myself it's this person's first time taking this interchange or taking this turn or whatever. I just tell myself something that lets me see them in like a more positive light. And I mean, that's not necessarily related to like masculinity. It's not like masculine that I do that, I guess. But it does sound to me like your reaction, or well, I don't know, this idea that anger is a masculine thing, I think is pretty silly, because I've definitely seen women get road rage too.
Oh, for sure. But the sort of the different emotions that I forget exactly how you put it, but we have a small range of small emotional,
like allowable emotions.
of allowable emotions. Absolutely, 1,000,000%. Anger is definitely one that seems allowed, and in the moment it feels, it does have maybe a silver lining of strength to it. It looks stupid. It looks absolutely pathetic when I see other people do it, and when I look back on it myself, and it's a healthy amount of embarrassment and shame, which I should feel. I'm not dodging that, but but yeah, I do think that anger is definitely, I can definitely see how anger is considered an allowable male emotion. For sure.
Yeah, and even a lot of the times, like when women act in these ways that we consider to be masculine, we immediately like defeminize them. You know, we like say like, oh, like she's being, you know, whatever it is. I don't want to upset Andrew's cousin or niece or whatever it is.
Oh,
Don't
uh,
want to use any naughty words.
oh, yeah. No, I get, yeah, they do watch. They do watch. That's true.
Yeah, but we say all these things like, oh, she's being frigid, she's being like
Hmm.
whatever it is. It's just like we tell them like she's not being womanly in this moment, because we say like being a woman you should be like, you know, soft, deferent, sweet, caring. And so in all of these ways that like that's why I have to bring in like gender in general when talking about masculinity, because in our society we do see things really binaristically, and so you can't really talk about one without talking about the other.
No, I see that. I see that. And thank you. This has been really informative. So then now taking it to how important do you see this in our politics? How should this inform our politics? How would you propose that?
Yeah, so this is like a very big question. Obviously, I'm not a policymaker or anything, but I do think that it would be not yet. Good point. Good point. Always aspiring. Like I think that politically, like this affects us in a lot of ways. In the ways that we see things, like I don't know, like the sort of like rampant, like sexism, I would still say is very alive and well. Just like casual misogyny. Okay, I'm just thinking back. I remember leading up to the 2016 election, I was visiting a mechanic and I'm just in the waiting room. And one of these guys, I guess a regular, comes in, starts chatting with the mechanic about the upcoming election. And the mechanic's like, yeah, I'm voting for Trump. And the guy's like, why are you doing that? And he says, Hillary, no balls. Like, that's literally what he said.
The feed cut out right as on your punch.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
He said he's voting for Trump because he said Hillary has no balls. Right? What does this mean? What does this mean? This is like very...
I mean, it's an accurate statement. I imagine...
yeah, it's accurate. Yeah, she doesn't have testicles. This is true. But the idea that she doesn't have this specific trait that like only men possess that make them great leaders. You know, they talk about it's like, like Hillary Clinton's going to get on her period and she's going to get pissy and send the nukes off. And it's like, dude, Donald Trump like is like throwing tantrums every day. Like this is really silly. And we see not even just Donald Trump. We see dudes like you who are not, you know, in this great state of power, but you're getting road rage. You're getting mad over something really inconsequential, right? Do we trust someone like that to have the nuclear button? Like, this seems very silly to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, I definitely have seen that. And when I guess my response, I love Hillary. I always have. I never bought the line that she's a liar, which is clearly a campaign. But she, at the way I thought about it was, and I think about this frequently. I probably should have been a teacher because I always do think about classrooms. The smartest kid in probably 80 to 90% of the classrooms that I've ever been in, when I was a student or as a teacher, it's a girl. it's a girl, 80 to 90% of the time. And I just never understood. I never understood that. Like, you guys were in these classrooms too. Very few of these guys I talked to were the valedictorian, and but a girl usually was. And so I never understood the. And I mean, I come from a family of you know, assertive, smart women, and so maybe I'm more exposed to it. And I guess that's something that I try to think about with as I talk to more folks about politics. It is about exposure in a lot of ways.
Definitely, absolutely. Like yeah, I've got strong and smart women in my family. My first ever like school principal was a black woman. Like this was never a question to me, can a woman, run things competently? But yeah, for a lot of people, yeah, they just have this weird kind of value system. And on the school thing, so like I would say that my experience reflects that. It's usually was, a girl or a woman would be like the smartest, or maybe smartest I wouldn't use, but like the best, the highest performing,
Yeah,
right?
fair.
And I think that comes because, well, girls seem to be held to higher standards in academics, especially like in those grade school days. It's like boys, we have the boys will be boys. Oh, he's like procrastinating, he's just out playing football, like that's good. Whereas girls, like I'm sure you knew the girls who had like the handwriting that like looked like a typewriter,
Yeah.
where they would just spend so much time like making their work look really nice, making sure it was super thorough. And that's just kind of like something that was sort of put on them, is like, you should act this way so that it's like nice. Like there were definitely also girls who had like chicken scratch handwriting, and it would be like, oh, like, why isn't your handwriting feminine? Isn't that strange?
Yeah, nicer handwriting is definitely
Yeah, isn't that weird? And to me, like, besides the fact that we're holding the women up to a higher standard there, we're holding men up to a very low standard. Where, if, a man, we just expect him to, go be the football player. And as long as he's doing this thing with his body, he could turn in some, yeah, chicken scratch, half finished thing. And they're going to still put him through so that he can keep doing football.
right.
That's just one example, but I think that we've all seen something like that happen.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting that I've never thought about. I definitely think nicer handwriting is more feminine. And this is my dad has perfect font style handwriting. If you ever needed to forge a signature as a child, you were not doing my dad's. It was fantastic handwriting, and I have pretty good handwriting but as I say it, I have pretty good handwriting for a guy. That's I It's amazing. The fish doesn't know it's wet, and there's a lot of one of the words that we've talked about on Friendly Argument, and I would sort of off topic, but maybe a little on topic. Woke. I I like the idea of it. My hangup is that it is past tense, and I don't think, unfortunately, I wish we all could be, oh, I've woken up, boom, I'm just awake, go. And unfortunately, it is this is a path that I believe that you're on as soon as you like come across that first realization, like, oh wow, I do have these beliefs about gender. I do have these beliefs about um, uh, race, and it doesn't mean. I think one of my first things, and maybe you've had a similar experience. Um, I took it very personally in college when I would read things about like how white straight Anglo-Saxon Protestant males, cis, that look like me, have done all these things to all these different people. And I was like, well, I never did those things. But then once you can, like you said, step back, step out of it, and like, oh yeah, I didn't do this, but I'm lucky that it didn't happen to me. And then that sort of, I don't have to feel bad that I was lucky. I just recognize it, just acknowledge that this is, luck, privilege, whatever, societal norms in your favor, that they do exist, and just try to constantly be aware of it, and be on that path to become fully aware of it, fully woke, if you will. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that what you just said is really beautiful. I agree. I had like a pretty similar experience of when I first encountered those kind of things, like, oh, men are trash, white men, straight men. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, like I've been doing these things all along and I didn't even know. And I'd be like, wait, but like I wasn't doing these things. But then, yeah, you take the step back and realize like, oh, like even if unintentionally, like I definitely have done things in the past that kind of capitalized on my maleness, my whiteness, like all these kind of things that, yeah, then in retrospect, like I feel bad about. But yeah, part of, so like with woke, I think an old friend of mine phrased it to me this way that I think is brilliant. She said, you aren't woke. Like woke isn't, like a lot of people talk about it as like, oh, it's like I had the awakening and like now I'm woke. I don't have to think about it anymore. And she told me, nah, it's about like staying woke. It's like you can't go back to sleep. You have to like, yeah, like you said, constantly be kind of interrogating your own personal biases, looking out into the world, like listening to other people's experiences. Because yeah, we do have the tendency to say like, oh, this is how I see the world. These are my experiences. This must be true, right? But then, you know, there are so many different people's lived experiences out there that like, if you bring them all in, you say, oh, like the world is totally different from what I think that it is. And so, yeah, it is like with like the stray white man thing is, yeah, is kind of, because I agree, like there is like the initial where you feel very guilty, but this is like very, very unproductive, right? Guilt doesn't help anyone. It just makes you feel bad. It makes you feel like, oh my God, like I've done these things, like I should just make myself small and like not do anything so that I don't hurt anyone. And I did feel like that for a little bit, but then I was like, hold on, by doing this, like I'm just hurting myself, and I could be spending the time, you know, acknowledge that I've done things in the past, use that guilt as like a motivator. Because so like, and earlier you mentioned shame, I think, after talking about the road rage. So this brilliant author, Brene Brown, kind of describes the difference between shame and guilt. And I think she does a really good job. See, she says, guilt is like what I did. I did something that does not correspond with my values, and so I feel bad. Shame is saying I did something that's like so bad that I'm undeserving of connection. Okay, so these are the two ways. So like guilt, I think, is like you can use it much more productively. You say, oh, I did these bad things, but those don't align with my values. I want to do things that do align with my values. And then you go out, you do good things in the world, whether that's, I don't know, hiring affirmative action, or, you know, going to like a protest march, or donating money. Like there are a lot of ways that this can pan out. So like that's what you can do with guilt. Shame is like a lot harder to do things with, because you say, oh my God, I did this thing, now I'm undeserving of connection. So you already are setting yourself up for like, I'm not going to be able to connect with people on this kind of level.
I never heard that definition of it. I think I thought of guilt as like a courtroom, and shame was like me within me. And, and anytime I feel shame, I or embarrassed, or I do something, I really try to put it out there so that I really feel it, so that next time it happens, I'll be hopefully less likely to do it. But that's interesting. I never thought of them in those terms. I did have a couple other questions.
Please.
You mentioned you self-identify as non-binary.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean for, and I'll venture a guess, and you can tell me, it's a little bit based on what you said earlier, that gender being separate than your biology, you don't choose, you don't see yourself as fitting into one side of that male list and not on the women's list of adjectives that typically describe them. You see it as I have them on both sides, regardless of my biology.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And I want to use a couple clarifying terms real quick, because, yeah, we haven't touched today yet on the difference between sex and gender.
Yeah.
So sex, we generally think of as our biology. We describe it as like male or female. And I got into this a little bit with Andrew. Like, this is also kind of a false binary, because there are intersex individuals They make up only about 1% of the population, which is low numbers, but it's about the same amount of redheads that there are. So there are about as many Andrews out there as there are intersex people.
Oh, please tell me you said that. Yeah.
Well, I brought up the redhead part, but I didn't think to reference him because he was wearing a beanie at the time. Okay, we couldn't see his beautiful hair.
Yeah, true. Okay.
um, but yeah, so that's sex, and then gender we call man and woman, non-binary, and all these other things. And gender, separate from biology, is like the social kind of aspect of it, how we are expected to act and the roles that we inhabit, how we interact with each other. So non-binary, you gave a pretty good description of it. I saw this list of masculine traits and feminine traits. I say, this doesn't feel right to me. Besides the fact that even I don't think anybody really fits perfectly into one. So we could say maybe we're all non-binary, but that's like a little bit beyond. Some people feel very comfortable as men and women. But yeah, so for me, it basically means like, I don't want to live my life in this sort of like restrictive box where I have to act these certain ways. I don't want to have this sort of imposition put on me that if I do something that's like considered feminine, all of a sudden I'm like less of a man. Like it makes me less of the thing that I am. Like this was really weird to me. And like I got teased a lot for being like not the average man in like middle school and early high school. And it's just gets put as like, oh, you're gay, you're a sissy, whatever. And it's like all these things is just saying like, you're not a man. And I took these things, this was like very offensive to me because I didn't have any concept of non-binary. I just knew man and woman. They're saying I'm not the thing that I think that I am. Like this is like causing some really weird internal kind of struggle. And this is really uncomfortable. And they're like putting me down in this way that I don't think even they understand fully. And then, later in life, I had been questioning my gender since I was around like 17 or 18, just being like, like this man thing, it's like, why is this, just like, why does it have to be this way? Like, this doesn't feel right to me. And then, it honestly wasn't, so that was when I was like 18, I'm 25. Only this year did I like understand myself as non-binary after, taking all these classes and like reading a lot of different, like resources on it, whether it was like informational or like reading other like non-binary people's telling their stories, how they understood themselves to be non-binary. And I was just reading all this stuff and being like, whoa, like that's exactly how I felt when I was growing up, like not really fitting into one or another, not really liking all these, the expectations that were had of me, and not liking, like I said, like when I acted outside of those expectations, I was denigrated for it. I'm like, why is this happening? This doesn't feel right. And so then I'm able to just take it. It's like, oh, that like these people, none of us had the language for it, but they were recognizing that, you know what? Yeah, like I'm not a man in that typical way that we think of. And I still think about this a lot. It's like I identify myself as non-binary. I use they, them, and he, him pronouns because I see myself as, most people when they see me, they're still gonna think that's a man, even though I have hair, I wear jewelry. I got my necklace, got my cute earrings. My grandma made these, by the way. And I got this colorful room. Most men's rooms don't look like this. Most men's rooms that I see, at least, are like there's like one piece of art on the wall, maybe. It's just like gray and stuff. There's not a whole lot of life and color to it. And, personally, I think that this is really silly that we think of like the fact that I have colors in my room makes me like less of a man.
Yeah.
It's all very silly, but I still, honestly, as long as I have a beard and, I'm like 6 feet tall, people are going to say this is a man. So I still recognize that I inhabit that sort of societal, or like I am perceived that way, and I still benefit from the privileges, even though like that's even a little bit contested because they give men all this stuff, but I'm like, I didn't act in these ways, so I didn't get all these benefits, but in other ways I definitely do. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And uh, because you touched on a little bit of your journey, the it was interesting. We after we talked about setting up the time for this, I got a chance, really for the first time ever, to consider like what did I consider masculine? What did I consider to be manly? And I really I never and again I really like that you say like you don't have the words for it all the time, and I never thought in those terms, zero, and started thinking about that the other day, and I really went back again, childhood, probably definitely elementary school, and I remember I think my dad said when I was 9, he's like, I can get you to do, I know exactly how to get you to do anything. I just have to tell you it'll make you stronger. And so, like, I remember sanding rust off of so many stupid salvage items as a kid, just because he's like, oh yeah, this will, you just do this for an hour and it'll make you stronger. I'm like, I'm doing that. Like, that really, like, he's just getting free labor, uh, out of me, but by sort of exploiting this thing, and that I had this belief in my mind that what I want to be stronger, strength, physical strength, particularly. Again, the 9-year-old, child doesn't have too many words for strength. You think of strong, you think of,
Yeah, you think of a big burly dude, you say, oh my God, I want to be a manly man. I want to be strong. This will make me strong. It'll make me a manly man. That's what I want.
yeah, and that now sort of digging down into it with this conversation and the lead up to this conversation, it's been interesting and eye-opening to sort of recognize where those things sort of lay in me and sort of reside in me. So thank you. This was really eye-opening, really helpful, and I really appreciate the topic and the time. I personally got way more out of it than I thought that I would. Again, I really didn't consider it in part of my political value system. Did you have any things you wanted to send us off with? Parting thoughts?
Are you trying to end already? I mean, I know that you guys try to keep it to 45 minutes, but Andrew and I went for 2 full hours.
Really? He makes me feel so bad about going over time. I'm so conscious of it. You called it exactly right. And he went 2 hours.
Yep.
Thank you for letting me know that. So now I can give him all the hell that he gives me, and he does. He makes it hard.
Yeah, and we don't have to go for 2 full hours, but I feel like we probably still have stuff to talk about. Like you said, you had a few questions and asked non-binary, but that was just one.
Yeah.
And so before you ask your second question, I just want to. So I was talking to a friend of mine after my discussion with Andrew, and just a guy from one of my feminist studies classes. We were just talking about gender and stuff, and he put it to me in a really interesting way that I hadn't really thought about. Kind of related to what you were saying, like the fish doesn't know it's in water. What is wet to a fish? That's all it knows. So yeah, we live in a society where up until like a few years ago, when I found out about like the existence of non-binary and trans individuals, like I had never thought about anything outside of man and woman. And so we just have this construction, like this is what is, and it's really hard to question it. It's really hard to have an imagination outside of it. And like this can be extrapolated to a lot of things in our society. Like we don't have to get too deep down this road because it's like a whole different conversation. But like this same friend of mine described to me this concept called capitalist realism, which is this idea where it's like we live in this system that we call capitalism, right? And we're told socialism doesn't work, communism doesn't work, nothing can work. Capitalism is like the system. And we're told that over and over so much that we just believe that it's true. It makes it really hard to imagine anything outside. And I'm not saying that means like necessarily capitalism is evil. I think it is in a lot of ways personally, but but like I said, that's like a whole other conversation, and it's like very, very complex. Maybe that could be a future episode. Um, but yeah, just kind of conceptually, it's like it's just hard to have an imagination outside of what we are told to be. Like, this is what it is. So yeah, we're told this is men and this is women. If you have a penis, you're a male, and you're a man and you act this way. If you have a vagina, you're a woman, you act this way. But like, it doesn't have to be that way.
Absolutely. So you touched on trans, and that is something very, very, not very near and dear to my heart, but kind of near and dear to my heart. So I was really into the band Against Me. If you're familiar, yeah, I think,
Yeah.
I don't know if we ever talked about it, but just really dug everything that they were doing. And then Laura Jane Grace, the lead singer of Against Me, she came out as transgender. I mean, well into their career, and it was this was a real. There's been a couple like sort of like, got to take a step back and reassess sort of things, like how do you deal with identifying so closely with someone that was dealing with their own identity, uh, and that really that was a real moment of introspection for me. And I have a really small production company and film production company, and we actually got a chance to work with Against Me and Laura in Chicago, and she's great. She's absolutely great. She's one of my personal favorites. But that was the transgender. Basically, Laura's transition really put transgender on the map for me, and really made me feel closer to that whole experience. As much as a white cis dude from the Midwest can.
Yeah, no, I mean, was there a question there? That's a great story. Yeah, Laura Jane Grace is awesome.
She is awesome. I was hoping that would be a jumping off point for more of that transgender conversation. I can have a capitalism conversation at the drop of a hat. So I didn't want to.
Yeah, that'll be another day. Trust that would be the next time I come on. That would be a good topic, I think. But yeah, as far as trans, there's a lot of stuff to say about this. So I think that trans people's existence shows us a lot about how gender is pretty arbitrary, at least like how we assign it. Like, because you have a penis, this does not necessarily mean that you're a man, which is evidenced by all these trans women who are born with penises, and then later in life, when they are able to kind of have like the tools and the support system and just the knowledge and language to express who they are, they're able to come out and be, oh, like, I'm a woman. I was a woman sort of this whole time, but I was kind of being put into this box of a man because of the way that I was born in the society that I was born into. And like a big thing that kind of got me to understand that like this, just kind of like unraveling the concept of gender, is specifically because, and I talked about this with Andrew last night, but so would you say, or I mean, we can just say it, like there has been an uptick in like trans people coming out in America, trans and non-binary people. A lot of people kind of frame it as like, oh, this is this new phenomenon, this new trend. And like these people, I think that their observation is like sort of correct, but it's like a little bit removed from history. Okay, this was one of the big things that I learned in my classes. Trans people have existed basically forever. Since like the earliest recorded history, there exists evidence of trans people. The oldest specific one that I could remember is in the Kama Sutra. There are trans people, or a little bit of cultural relativism here. Like they didn't call themselves trans. That's kind of what we would call them through our Western lens. They have different names for it and different understandings of what it means, but it's like more or less the same kind of concept. And this is going back, minimum like 2,000 years, probably more than that, if we really dug into the examples. And so a lot of the ways, like trans people have existed forever, but in a large way, like they were kind of suppressed, mostly in my understanding by like religion, specifically like the spread of Christianity, and like all of those values and stuff, where it said, and I think there may have been some like legitimate justification for it at a certain time where population numbers were low. They were trying to be able to expand their civilization, have enough people to work. So they said a man and a woman need to get together to procreate so that we have more people to exist and to like work for our glorious nation.
Can you think of something that we need less encouragement for than procreation? I mean, if there's anything like hardwired in both in all people, I mean, it's like I don't know. I guess you're right. In some instances in history, there's definitely been times where it was like, okay, we need household formation here. Let's encourage that. But you evolve. Can we evolve? Are we evolve? Like, can we get out of that mindset? Like, yeah, I know it worked. It worked in that situation where we really needed it. But hey, congratulations, you graduated. Now there's like a ton of us.
Exactly. Yeah. There are so many people in the world, like we're able to create enough like food and everything for everyone to be able to eat if we allocated it properly. Unfortunately, there are a lot of problems with that. That'll be for the capitalism discussion. But but yeah, it's like we have enough people, that there isn't this like dire need to like create more of us. So that's like part of it, I think, is why, well, I don't think that like the growing population is why there are more trans people, although I guess just bigger numbers creates bigger numbers. Even if the percentage is still the same, more people, 1% is going to be way more people.
And we touched a little bit on this Andrew and I did an episode on the Netflix documentary Disclosure about trans folks in Hollywood, and I feel like America, on average, is just a very it's got you really got to beat us over the head with something before we get there. We don't do subtlety. That's for Downton Abbey and the UK and all that sort of stuff. So I do think like there's just about everything you can imagine under the sun could be happening right under the American nose. And until it's like a swift kick in the throat, we're not gonna pay attention. And so anybody who would say like, oh, transgender is this new, they talk about it almost like it's a fad or a trend. And I'm like, you wouldn't have known. I don't think you would have known anyway. I don't think you were looking for it. And even if you were looking for it, I don't think your instrument is attuned enough as an American, myself included, to catch a 1% change or even a 0.5% change, which is a huge number of people. So yeah, that I fully believe that, and there's people that could have hit it and over time and.
Yeah, that's a big part of it too, is like, yeah, we think that there are so many more like gay and lesbian and trans people, but it's like, I would say that it's more accurate that we're more accepting of these things now. So these people are able to come out way more. They have to hide it less. And yeah, I think a lot of that, and there are a lot of contributing factors to this. One, I think, is like the move towards secularism. like people are just less kind of concerned with religion, and religion seems to be where a lot of the values of that sort of like gender dichotomy and the like heteronormativity. Are you familiar with this term?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah.
I know not everyone is.
You want to define it just for the viewer?
Yeah, for the listeners. So yeah, heteronormativity, kind of in line with the rest of the stuff that we talking about this sort of like realism, is this idea that it's like posited to us as kids that it's like men and women are kind of like symbiotic. So there's like the hetero is just like this idea that like all men love all women and all women love all men, or like that everyone is straight basically.
Yeah.
to put it very simply.
Yeah.
This idea that everyone is straight, but this idea is obviously not true. One person who's gay just lets us know that this is not true, you know. And so that's like one factor. I think another huge factor in this is the proliferation of communications technology, specifically the internet allowing, and I've thought about this for many years, is allowing for basically any minority groups to have a voice, where it's like, I imagine, you know, if you've got your podunk town in the middle America and you're like the one gay kid or like the one black kid or something like that, like you can't really like be yourself that much, because like I don't know, the black kid probably would have a harder time trying to be white. I don't know, kind of a weird example. Let's just stick to the gay one.
Yeah, I follow this. I track.
Yeah, so the gay kid, if they show outwardly that they're gay and they're the only gay kid there, like they're gonna get beat up. Like that's just the hard truth of it. I
would be very surprised if that was a smooth.
Yeah, right. And it's kind of that exposure thing that we were talking about earlier. If everyone in the town has never met a gay person, suddenly they meet a gay person and all that they've been told is like straight people is correct and anything that's not straight is bad, like they're gonna treat that person poorly. But then so that's like that one kid in that town, like pre-internet. But then with the internet, like that one kid can get online and find like, you know, a comfortable space on like a forum or some website, like in a Twitter circle or whatever, with the other like one gay kid from all of their little podunk towns.
Yeah.
And then they create a community. And even if they maybe can't be that open in their own lives, like, or like in their public lives, they could still be who they are. And also just knowing that other people exist who are like you makes a huge difference. Like I said, like I would not have understood myself as non-binary, at least as soon, if it weren't for me just going on the internet and seeing other non-binary people talking about their experience. And it just made me be like, oh, like this is a thing that exists. Like I could be this.
Interesting. Yeah, the definitely seems like the first step is well, probably seeking out, but then that finding of the language is the first sort of like light bulb that seems to go off. It certainly was for me in the couple examples that I brought up, and also the this conversation and just rethinking. I am trying to figure out where masculinity and gender issues should be in my political value system. Are there things that are going on right now that are the most recent thing I heard, and wasn't even prepping for this interview, Tulsi Gabbard, I read a headline, didn't even read the article. Yeah. Oh, okay. So maybe I'm on track. Tulsi Gabbard put something forth that is anti-trans.
Yeah, I haven't looked into all of the details. I think it's something with trans athletes. Honestly, like I had this conversation with Andrew. This is like such a niche topic within like trans discourse, even that like I kind of don't even think that we should open this can of ball worms. Not a phrase, but that's how I like to say it.
I have no idea what that means. It's great though.
People say open up a can of worms, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. I don't know how the word ball got in there. I have no idea.
Oh, that's great. You should keep that.
yeah, I don't want, so yeah, I don't want to open this whole can of ball worms about the trans athlete stuff, because I do think that it is a legitimate issue, but I think that neither one of us and most people, I don't think that Tulsi Gabbard probably has enough knowledge on the subject to like be trying to pass legislation. But like, I don't even really want to get into it, to be honest.
Okay.
But it does bring up the good point of like, okay, so yeah, on the big picture, like politically, well, so yeah, so this is like where do I want to take this? So yeah, like the trans thing, this is, yeah, even though trans existence is not new, it is kind of new in the American sort of consciousness and political understanding. So there is, I think, a lot that needs to be done here. But I would say it's like more about changing sort of like public opinion, because like legislatively, I don't think trans people are really asking for that much. It's mostly just like, can we be able to like get access to healthcare? Can we be able to legally, change our names and our like gender markers on our IDs? Can we just want, it's kind of the same thing that everyone wants, right? They just want to be able to live their lives without being discriminated against, which is like pretty simple.
Yeah.
I think it's simple in the abstract. In the particulars, it gets a little bit more muddy.
And then the hang-ups are those, the hearts and minds, let's say, the legitimacy of it in general American society towards trans. Like, okay, yeah, you're trans, here's your change of license form, making that all available to them so that they can do whatever they see fit to that. Do is this like, what would be sort of like your value system? What is like your some really high end, you don't even have to list it out exactly, but these are, top 3 things for me, or very high end things for me, and some like lower level things for
yeah, so yeah, it's a little bit hard to talk about because yeah, my things are more like I said, like cultural shifts than necessarily like policy shifts. Like I don't really know how you enact policy that is like oh, like, men and women should be just like treated and expected equal things from, right? That's not exactly a policy that you can put through. That's like individuals have to sort of make that change. But there are kind of policy things that can move us towards that, more in terms of like LGBTQ acceptance, where it's like, for instance, this country, I mean, is still very racist, but it used to be very explicitly racist. Like on the books, it was racist. And then they took it off the books. And of course, racism still persists. But I would say that, like discontinuing, different like water coolers for white people and black people, this probably works to change, like shift cultural opinion over a length of time where, if you're a kid growing up and you see, oh, black people are at like that other fountain. And that's like just one little example. I know that segregation was like a huge thing, but it creates a hierarchy, whereas white people and black people are beneath. And so, but then if you have the same water cooler, there's no hierarchy anymore, So it could be like the same thing. I'm trying to think of like a specific, like, okay, like, I mean, stuff like Trump was trying to get it so that like gay couples couldn't adopt kids. I don't think that he was able to get it passed, but he tried to get it passed. I'm pretty sure that he got through like a transgender military ban, which is like, I feel like kind of funnily conflicted on this because I'm pretty anti-military in general. It's like, I don't want my trans brother and his sister to be out there dying in wars for American imperialism. But if they want to, I think that they should have that right as Americans,
Yeah.
So like little stuff like this, because yeah, if just like some person sees like, oh, transgender people aren't allowed in the military, they see, oh, like that must mean it's because they're bad, like there's something wrong with them that they should be disallowed from this like basic American thing. But if we say, oh, like trans people are allowed here, like no ifs, ands, or buts, it like works to just normalize trans existence a little bit. And yeah, that's the thing. Like I think a lot of the like anti-trans people, they're like worried that trans people are about to come and like take over or something. But like I said, like this is a very, very small subset of the population. And they don't want to take over. They just want to be respected.
Well, and this is a great, too good of a jump off not to go on. That's something that I don't say explicitly with Andrew, but I totally get that the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant dudes, cis guys in American history have had as approaching 100% of the power as close as possible. And it is less than that now. That has shifted. And I can understand the fear of how far is it going to go, sort of this slippery slope argument.
There's this amazing quote I saw a while ago. I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit poorly, but it was like, to those in power, equality feels like oppression.
Woo! I mean, you just defined white fragility right there. I mean, it's so obvious. Like, it's I don't know. It's super obvious to me. And I guess one of the things that I try to point at the bush, run around the bush and point at it and not actually say it is, hey, dude, like to Andrew and I, like we're born white dudes in America. We have all the luck we need. We could give away some luck and we still have more than enough. And I've always felt that way. I maybe not always felt that way, but as soon as I started to become politically astute, I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm good. Like, and not only that, but like I knew Social Security existed. So like, okay, now I don't only have to do it for me, I have to do it for others, you know? And I'm like, I can do that. I can do that for me and for others. Like there's, again, plenty, I have plenty. I'm hard enough working, able body, just really lucky, just lucky. And so I can carry my own for more than enough. And I could help out some other folks that are just as good of a citizen as me in every way. And that needs a little help. Absolutely. And by the way, it's that we have this opportunity, you, me, Andrew, because we're standing on the shoulders of giants, of these amazing forebears that came before us, that were hardworking, that were, self-sacrificing and joiners and came together. And so I really would love to get to that point with him where I think we're good. I think we're plenty lucky. I think we could give away 5 percentage points of advantage and still have more than enough.
Yeah, I mean, just think about what we're doing right now. Okay, this is a Saturday. This is an early afternoon. We are both in our beautiful apartments. You got your nice downtown skyline. I'm in Glendale, so it's not as pretty, but like I have a nice room. Neither one of us is like, working with our bodies right now. We have the time, and we've had all the time in the past to be able to just think about these things that we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
And this is good. And we're on our computers, it's like not everyone has just this basic level of comfort. So yeah, I'm really glad that we could acknowledge that. And yeah, to think like I could come down a pretty significant amount of like comfort and wealth and stuff and still be better off than like I don't know if a majority, but like a lot of people,
Oh, 1,000,000%. And you can safely say majority. From a socioeconomic standpoint, America, dude, we're well ahead.
I even just meant like within America.
Oh,
like,
sure.
Yeah, and I mean we live in Los Angeles. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, just just so lucky in so many ways. And yeah, I think I'm glad that we can acknowledge that. I'm glad that we can acknowledge that. So this feels like a natural ending. Does it?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, I think this feels like, yeah, we talked about a lot of different things. We kind of brought it in. We didn't exactly get to like the core question of like, where should this be on the value system for like American policy in general. But I think that we kind of touched on a lot of things that kind of get around that question. And we had a lot of other different topics come in and out.
For sure.
Yeah, it's been great. Do you want to say the ending phrase?
Oh, absolutely. Well, first off, I want to thank you for reaching out and offering to be a part of it. Glad, could not be happier about it. Got a lot out of it, and got a lot out of it as a person, personally as well, and got more opportunity to connect with you, which has always been great. So thank you again, and everybody who watches, hope you get something out of this. Check out our buddy Yali. We'll have his social medias available. And
yeah, I've got my YouTube channel. Put that in the description.
oh, fantastic! What's the name of your YouTube channel?
I think it's just my name. I've got a series that I recently started. It's called WTF is Up with Men, where I just discuss different men's issues. So far, there's only one episode because my quarter at college has been very, very demanding. But I'm definitely going to be putting one up over winter break and going to keep making them when I find the time.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, we'll absolutely WTF Up with Men.
WTF is Up with Men. And I normally say the whole thing, but I want to respect Andrew's family.
I like it. We'll absolutely check it out, and that'll be available for folks. And I'll let you get back to your studies. Go banana slugs. And this is Jeremy with Friendly Argument. Thanks for watching, everybody. And well, this was pretty easy to definitely.
You got it. Come on. We were friends before. We were friends during, and we're still friends now. Cheers, brother.
Talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Welcome to Friendly Argument with Andrew Bernard and Jeremy Jones. Let's do this. New stuff. All the tangents. Some politics. Booze. Some more politics. Stuff about Kansas. And lots of cheers aids.
Friendly Argument is a podcast showcasing conversations that seek common ground across the aisle of American politics, as well as a few laughs. We hope you guys enjoy, and thanks for watching.